Mogadishu, Somalia. The night of October 18, 1977, a hijacked German airliner sits on a dark runway, with 86 hostages inside and 4 armed men holding the cockpit. West German commandos crawl up under the belly of the aircraft. The assault lasts 7 minutes. Every hostage walks off alive. 3,000 miles away in Washington, a phone rings, and a decision that had been buried in Army paperwork for 15 years finally gets signed. 1 month later, a new American unit is born. It has no name the public will ever hear. It will be called the Unit, and it will be built almost entirely out of men wearing the green beret. If you want the missions the official record buried, subscribe to War Code. This is one of them. Here's the part nobody puts on the recruiting poster. The most dangerous direct action force the United States has ever fielded did not appear out of nowhere. It was assembled, bolt by bolt, from the Green Berets. The same men, the same selection, the same brutal philosophy. And the answer to why Delta became more dangerous than the force that made it has nothing to do with Delta being better soldiers. It has everything to do with what each unit was built to do. Start with the older brother, United States Army Special Forces, the Green Berets. The lineage runs straight out of the Second World War, out of the men who parachuted into occupied Europe to arm and lead the resistance. One of them was a colonel named Aaron Bank. Bank had served in the Office of Strategic Services, the wartime spy outfit that became the ancestor of the modern special operations world. In the summer of 1944, Bank jumped into occupied France to link up with the resistance and turn farmers and shopkeepers into a fighting force. He came home convinced the army needed men who could do that on purpose, by design, anywhere on Earth. Bank had earned the conviction the hard way. In the summer of 1944, he led a team into occupied France, charged with meeting the resistance and coordinating sabotage against the German occupiers alongside British and Dutch and Belgian personnel. He had watched a few trained men multiply into a force far larger than themselves. That was the lesson he carried home. In June of 1952, Bank got his wish. The 10th Special Forces Group was activated at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. He stood up the unit alongside Colonel Russell Volkman, a man who had led guerrillas against the Japanese in the Philippines and knew the same truth from the other side of the world. It was the first Special Forces unit in American history. The mission was written plainly: infiltrate small teams deep behind enemy lines and organize the local population into a guerrilla army. Take 12 men, hand them a province, and give back 1,000 fighters who answer to you. That is the Green Beret. That is the force multiplier. One soldier who turns into an army. Their doctrine eventually settled into 5 core missions: unconventional warfare, foreign internal defense, direct action, counterterrorism, special reconnaissance. Remember those last 2, because a decade later one unit would peel them off and live for almost nothing else. For years they fought without recognition until a young president took notice. In 1961, John Kennedy authorized the Green Beret as official headgear against the wishes of much of the Army brass. A year later he called it a symbol of excellence, a badge of courage, a mark of distinction in the fight for freedom. The hat became the legend, but the hat was never the point. The point was the mission. Unconventional warfare, foreign internal defense, teaching other men to fight and win their own wars. Now meet the man who would split off from all of it and build something new. Charles Alvin Beckwith, born in 1929, a Special Forces officer to the bone. In 1962, Beckwith was sent to England on an exchange tour with the British 22nd Special Air Service Regiment, the SAS. He commanded a troop inside an SAS squadron, and what he saw there rearranged how he understood his entire profession. The British were not building armies of guerrillas. They were building a small number of nearly unkillable individuals trained to hit a precise target and vanish. Different tool, different job. Beckwith came home and wrote a report. The United States Army, he argued, had no equivalent. No surgical unit built to kick a door, kill or capture one man, and leave. He submitted it. The Army said no. He submitted it again. No. For most of a decade, the idea sat in a drawer while Beckwith went off to fight a very different kind of war. Because, here's the part that matters. Beckwith did not just dream about danger. He lived inside it as a Green Beret. In 1965, he volunteered to return to Vietnam, and the Army handed him command of one of the most secret Special Forces units in the country, Project Delta. Detachment B-52, attached to the 5th Special Forces Group. Small reconnaissance teams, A handful of Americans and a handful of South Vietnamese sent deep into territory the enemy owned to find them, mark them, and call down fire. It was as close to a death sentence as the Army issued. Project Delta had been built at the start of the war as hunter-killer teams, a few American Special Forces men paired with South Vietnamese soldiers, sent to find the enemy in ground he thought was his alone, mark him, and bring the bombs down on his head. Beckwith took that unit and ran it the way the SAS had taught him, testing and selecting his men for the long-range work the way the British tested theirs. In early 1966, it nearly killed him. Beckwith took a .50 caliber bullet through the abdomen. A round that size does not wound a man. It removes parts of him. The medics looked at the damage and triaged him as beyond saving. He survived anyway. And the name of that brutal Vietnam recon unit, Project Delta, would echo a decade later in the name of the force he was about to build. So hold the picture. The future founder of America's premier direct action unit was a Green Beret. The doctrine he admired came from a foreign regiment. The fire that forged him came from a special forces project in Vietnam. Every thread leads back to the same source. Special Forces built the man who built the unit. The world finally forced the Army's hand. Through the early 1970s, terror came to the West. Munich in '72, where 11 members of the Israeli Olympic team died because no one in the West had a trained unit ready to take them back. A wave of hijackings followed across Europe and the Middle East. The Germans and the Israelis built dedicated counter-terror units while America had nothing on the shelf. Then came Mogadishu. The West German counter-terror unit stormed that hijacked airliner on the dark runway, freed all 86 hostages, and killed 3 of the 4 gunmen in roughly 7 minutes of violence. The message could no longer be ignored. The brass approved Beckwith's unit at last. In November of 1977, the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment, the unit the world would learn to call Delta, was activated by Beckwith and Colonel Thomas Henry. It was modeled directly on the SAS. Its purpose was the narrow, lethal mission the Green Berets were never optimized to do: hostage rescue, counter-terror, the surgical raid, kill or capture in and out before anyone knew they had come. And right here is where the rivalry was born, because Special Forces did not want to let go. Beckwith told his bosses he needed 24 months to stand the unit up. He needed to recruit hundreds of men to keep a few dozen. He needed to build a selection course from scratch. 2 years is a long time when terrorists are taking airliners every season. So Special Forces did something that tells you everything about the bad blood. They stood up their own counter-terror unit to fill the gap. They called it Blue Light. They pulled it straight from the 2nd Battalion of the 5th Special Forces Group and handed it to a colonel named Bob Mountell. They staffed it with Vietnam veterans of the most secret projects of the war. Officially, Blue Light was a temporary bridge until Delta was ready. Quietly, a lot of Special Forces men hoped it would become permanent and that the counter-terror mission would stay inside the regiment where they believed it belonged. It was a quiet war between brothers over who would own the future. Delta won it. But never forget that the Green Berets fought to keep the very capability they are now accused of being less dangerous than. They were not less capable. They were being asked to give up a mission they had already proven they could do. If you have made it this far, you are already one of us. Cadets get every video 24 hours early and a badge in the comments. The link is below. Now we get to the real answer. What actually makes Delta more dangerous in that narrow surgical sense? It is not mystique. It is selection. And selection is the one thing Beckwith refused to compromise on, because he had seen what the British built, and he had bled enough in Vietnam to know that average men get other men killed. He did not recruit civilians. He did not grow operators from raw enlistees. He went hunting inside the Army's existing elite, the Special Forces groups, and the Ranger battalions, men who had already survived the hardest training the conventional force offered. One general would later testify that Delta is roughly 70% Rangers, the rest drawn largely from Special Forces. Read that again. The most dangerous unit in the force does not make its own men. It harvests them, fully formed, from the units that came before it, from the Green Beret, from the Ranger Scroll. Then it breaks them. The selection course Beckwith built borrowed its cruelty from the SAS. The first formal class ran from April to September of 1978. No instructor yells. No one motivates you. They simply give you a map, a compass, a rucksack, and a set of points to reach, and they never tell you the standard you must beat. You do not know how far. You do not know how fast. You do not know when it ends. The doubt is the test. It builds to one event the men only ever call the long walk, roughly 40 miles, a rucksack around 45 pounds on your back, rough terrain, alone, against a clock you are never shown. By the time a man reaches it, he is already wrecked, days deep into the course, and he has to find inside himself the thing that cannot be taught, the will to keep moving when nothing external tells him to. The numbers are merciless. One former operator described 2 selection classes of 120 applicants each. Out of 120, 12 to 14 finished. Another account put it at 120 in, 16 passing, 8 completing the full operator course. Roughly 9 out of 10 of the Army's already elite soldiers wash out. These are not ordinary infantrymen failing. These are Green Berets and Rangers, men who already passed the hardest gates the Army has, failing again at a harder one. That is the engine of the danger. Not bigger muscles, not secret weapons. A filter so fine that it strains the best of the best down to the few who simply will not quit. Special Forces Selection asks, can you lead and teach and endure for years in a foreign land? Delta Selection asks one narrower and colder question. When the door comes off and there is no one watching, will you go through it? Same brutality, aimed at a different target. So which is more dangerous? The honest answer is the one this audience already knows. It depends entirely on the job. Give Special Forces a hostile province and a year, and 12 men will hand you back an army. They will speak the language, learn the families, win the loyalty, and bleed a war from the inside until your enemy collapses under the weight of his own people. No raid can do that. No surgical strike can do that. That is a kind of power Delta was never built to wield, and pretending otherwise is an insult to the men who do it. But give Delta a building, a hostage, and a single night, and you will get something no army of guerrillas can match. A handful of men who appear, kill, or capture the one target that matters, and are gone before the alarm finishes sounding. That is the danger the title is pointing at. Not better men, a finer point on the same blade. And Special Forces forged that blade, taught it, and surrendered its best steel to make it. The proof came fast, and it came hard. Delta reached full readiness in the fall of 1979. Weeks later, Iran fell, and 52 Americans were seized inside the embassy in Tehran. The brand new unit got its first mission before it had ever fought. April 24, 1980. Operation Eagle Claw. A staging point deep inside Iran the planners called Desert One. 8 helicopters launched off a carrier toward that spot in the dark. Only 5 arrived able to fly. With the minimum gone, Beckwith made the call to abort, the right call, and as the force pulled back, a helicopter drifted into a parked transport plane loaded with fuel and men. The fireball lit the desert. 8 Americans died on the sand that night, 5 airmen and 3 Marines. The hostages were not freed. The country watched the wreckage on the evening news. It was a catastrophe, and it was the most important failure in the history of American special operations because of what it exposed. The raid had failed not from a lack of courage, but from a lack of a system. Helicopters from one service, planes from another, commandos from a third, no single commander, radios that could not talk to each other. The danger of the individual operator meant nothing without a machine to carry him to the target. So, they built the machine. The investigation, the Holloway Commission, demanded a permanent standing headquarters to command these units, to make them train together and fight together under one roof. In December of 1980, that headquarters was activated, the Joint Special Operations Command, JSOC. The dark heart of the modern force was born directly out of the ashes of Delta's first and worst night. The failure built the future. And that is the secret the recruiting posters will never carry. Delta Force did not descend from the sky as a finished weapon. It was assembled out of the Green Berets, by a Green Beret, using a foreign regiment's blueprint, and a selection course cruel enough to reject 9 of every 10 of the Army's already elite. It became the most dangerous tool in the box for one specific job. The Green Berets remained the most dangerous tool for an entirely different one, the slow, patient business of turning a nation's own people into a weapon. So before you argue, get the claim exactly right. Delta is not more dangerous than the Green Berets. Delta is more dangerous at one thing the Green Berets deliberately handed off, because the Green Berets built it to be. Now to the veterans and the serious students watching this, settle it in the comments. If you could deploy only one to win a long war in hostile country, the surgical raiders or the men who raise armies, which do you send, and which one actually decides the outcome? Make your case with facts, not flags. Official members get the parts that do not survive, the public versions, the names and the details we cut before publish. The door is below.